My son said I couldn't stay for Christmas, so I took the tree and the title deed. I arrived at my son's house on Christmas Eve with a tin of cookies I had baked that morning and a small wrapped box containing the last childhood gift I had saved for him. It felt foolish carrying something so sentimental into a place that now looked like a showroom, but mothers cling to hope long after hope stops clinging back. Nathan's home glowed with lights and expensive decorations, each corner curated to look effortless. Music drifted out the windows, the kind of polished joy that makes a person hesitate before knocking. I stood there for a moment, brushing snow off my sleeves, holding my little potted Christmas tree close so the wind wouldn't knock it over. I told myself he would smile. He used to. Before I lifted my hand to the door, it swung open and Amber appeared, dressed in sequins that sparkled harder than her eyes. Behind her, guests in perfect outfits held glasses of wine and looked like they belonged in a magazine ad. Amber stared at me as if I were a glitch in the evening she had spent weeks rehearsing. "Why is she here? Nathan, did you forget to lock the door?" A woman behind her whispered loudly, "Is she the housekeeper? She looks like she came to clean the chimney." Their laughter rose gently, polished and cruel. Nathan walked over, irritation already tightening his jaw when he saw me. "Mom, you can't just show up. This dinner is planned down to the last detail. You don't fit the theme." I tried to ignore the words that felt sharper than the wind outside. "I brought cookies," I said softly. "And a small tree." I thought. Amber wrinkled her nose. "Your sweater smells like old storage. Please step back. Guests are eating." Someone else chuckled. A man near the fireplace whispered something about stray relatives, and the whole room seemed to tilt slightly, pushing me toward the edges. Nathan's expression only hardened further. "Mom, don't loom around the table. People might think you're looking for leftovers. It takes a particular kind of cruelty to speak that casually, the kind that comes from practice." I steadied my breath, though it trembled slightly in my chest. "Nathan," I whispered. "The storm is getting worse. The buses stopped running. I walked here. Could I stay tonight? Just tonight?" He didn't even pretend to consider it. "You're not staying. Not tonight. Not this Christmas. You drain the whole atmosphere." I felt a dull thud behind my ribs, the kind you feel when someone slams a door in your heart instead of your face. Around that moment, around the place where humiliation meets clarity, I felt something shift inside me. Not anger, not pride, just witness. And if you feel that justice deserves to be heard, if you want stories like this to echo further than the rooms where we are silenced, then smash that hype button, let these truths travel where they need to. Thank you, sweetheart. Keep listening. I tightened my grip on the tin of cookies. "Nathan, please, the roads." Amber stepped forward, moving with the confidence of someone who had never been told no. She snatched the little gift bag from my hand, glanced at it, then tossed it straight into the kitchen trash can. The sound of it hitting the bin was louder than it should have been. Or maybe it was my heart that echoed. A few guests gasped quietly, but not out of sympathy, only surprise at how blunt she was willing to be. Amber smoothed her dress and smiled, as if she had just cleaned a stain off her floor. Nathan walked to the door and pulled it open again, letting a blast of winter rush through the room. "Don't make a scene, Mom," he said, pointing outside. "Leave before it gets embarrassing." Embarrassing. That was what he called my presence, my love, my motherhood. I looked at him, really looked, and saw a man who had forgotten everything gentle, everything that once made him mine. Cruelty doesn't always arrive suddenly. Sometimes it waits years for a stage. Christmas Eve became his stage. I bent to pick up the small potted tree with its red yarn bows, his favorite color once. He didn't glance at it, or at me. I stepped outside, snow hitting my face, sharp and wet. The door closed so fast it wasn't a goodbye, only a dismissal. The street was empty, the storm pushing everyone indoors except me, holding that tiny tree like something fragile that had survived more winters than anyone knew. I walked slowly, hearing laughter swell behind me. I had brought warmth. I left with only the cold. And that was how my Christmas began, outside the home I once dreamed of, carrying nothing but a gift no one wanted, and a dignity no one could take. People like to imagine cruelty begins suddenly, but in my life it grew slowly, like mildew in a damp corner, small, ignored, and eventually too large to scrape off. Nathan's resentment toward me did not appear the night he threw me out at Christmas. It had been planted long before, in the years when I stitched clothes by a dim basement bulb and tried to raise a boy while the world kept reminding us of what we lacked. I spent most of my early adulthood sewing anything people brought me: split seams, torn sleeves, dresses ruined during nights they wished they could forget. Women who escaped violent homes came often. They arrived with trembling hands, carrying bags of clothes, soaked in fear more than fabric. I mended what I could and refused payment every time. Helping them made me feel like the world still had a place where softness mattered. But neighbors in our poor Texas block didn't see it that way. One woman liked to gossip loudly near her doorway, never once lowering her voice. "She repairs clothes for abused women? No wonder her son turned out weird," she'd say, pointing her chin at my window as if I were a disease she hoped would move away. Nathan heard those things young, far too young to know how to pull poison out of a wound. Children absorb shame before they understand it. A group of boys on our street used to make fun of him when he came home carrying my mending basket. "Your mom smells like basement laundry," one shouted once, holding his nose. "Even a stray dog smells better." Their laughter echoed through the alley. Nathan's shoulders curled inward as if protecting something fragile inside him, something he didn't want me to see. One night he threw the mending basket across the kitchen floor. "Why can't you get a normal job?" he yelled, though he was too small to understand what he was really asking for: respectability. Visibility. Something that didn't come with shame attached. His grandmother, my late husband's mother, didn't help. She looked at me with cold eyes from the first moment we met. "My son married you and ruined his own future," she said once, standing in my tiny kitchen with her expensive coat still on. "Poverty clings to you like mold, Vienna, and now it clings to him." She made sure Nathan heard. She always made sure he heard. I didn't know that every insult she planted became a belief he carried. As Nathan grew older, he learned to admire people who looked polished, people who donated money in public so cameras could catch their generosity. "That's real kindness," he would say when he saw a local businessman hand out Thanksgiving turkeys with a news crew filming every angle. He never said that about me, even when I stayed up until dawn stitching coats for women who had nowhere else to turn. He never called that kindness. To him, it was embarrassing. The deeper he stepped into adulthood, the more he absorbed the twisted sayings people liked to repeat around our neighborhood. "Help the poor, and you'll stay poor. And being nice is what keeps people stuck." He heard a man once say, "A wife who saves broken people only drags her husband down with them." Nathan never forgot that sentence, though he pretended he wasn't listening. He rewrote our family history using lines he picked up from strangers. In his mind, I wasn't the woman who kept our lights on with a sewing needle. I was the reason his father, who died from exhaustion and untreated heart issues, never achieved more. And then Amber appeared. She was clever enough to see the holes in Nathan's heart and cruel enough to widen them. She admired success loudly, but despised humility quietly. She whispered things into Nathan that sharpened every insecurity he had ever held. "Your mom uses her kindness to manipulate you emotionally," she told him one night when she didn't know I was in the hallway. "That woman drains successful men. She drained your father. She's draining you too." Here is a 200-word condensed version preserving structure, logic, tone, and emotional depth. I felt something collapse inside me, not because I believed Amber's words, but because I could hear how easily Nathan did. After that, every gesture I made became an offense. If I called, he said I was clinging. If I visited, he said I was invading. If I offered help, he said I was manipulating him. I became a weight he blamed for every insecurity he once carried as a child. When he became financially comfortable, the change was complete. He built a fragile image of success that couldn't tolerate reminders of his past, not even his mother. He praised wealthy donors who performed their kindness in front of cameras, yet despised the quiet kindness that asked for nothing back. He admired strangers who gave with applause, but recoiled from the woman who had mended lives with her hands in silence. He carried the cruel voices of his childhood like commandments, that I was a burden, a stain, something to outrun. And eventually he convinced himself that protecting his future meant erasing me. So when he threw me out at Christmas, it wasn't sudden. It was the final act of a story he had rewritten long before. Amber tossing my gift wasn't about a box, it was about decades of love he had recast as shame. As I walked through the storm, holding my little tree, I finally saw what I had never wanted to see. In Nathan's world, everything I gave had become a fault. My heart, the very thing that built him, was the heaviest thing he ever carried. People always talk about the dead as if their stories rest quietly once the funeral ends, but my husband's story never settled. It lived beneath my ribs for decades, like a secret wrapped too tightly to breathe. Nathan grew up believing his father died from overwork, from stress, from the weight of providing for a family that included a wife he thought was more burden than blessing. I let him believe that. I carried that lie until it curved my spine. But the truth was nothing like the story he held. Nathan's father, my Daniel, did not die from exhaustion. He died on a warm Texas afternoon while trying to do something kind, something small, something that should have been remembered with tenderness instead of anger. He died on his way to buy Nathan's 9th birthday gift. I had begged him not to go that day. "We cannot afford it," I told him gently. But Daniel had a softness for our boy, a sweetness he never apologized for. "He has been through so much already," he whispered while putting on his coat. "Let him feel celebrated this year." I did not argue after that. Love makes room for hope, even when the numbers in your pocket do not. Nathan never knew what the gift was supposed to be: a baseball glove signed by the local minor league team. Daniel heard Nathan talking about it at school pickup, a rare moment of excitement in those difficult years. So he worked an extra shift at the warehouse, tucked away enough cash, and left the house humming a small tune. He never came back. The police told me his truck had been hit by a speeding driver who ran a red light. The impact was strong enough that Daniel did not make it to the hospital. His wallet was still in his jacket. So was the envelope with the cash for the glove. I remember sitting on the cold tile floor in the emergency room bathroom, pressing my hands to my face, whispering, "How do I tell Nathan? He was just a boy who had already seen more struggle than he deserved, a boy who adored his father so deeply he tried to copy the way Daniel tied his shoelaces. The truth would have unraveled him." So I lied. I told him Daniel died of a sudden medical episode, a heart that gave up after years of stress. It was not the whole truth, but it protected him from a deeper wound, the knowledge that his father died trying to make him happy. I thought I was protecting him. I thought shielding children from pain was what good mothers did. What I did not see was how that lie grew roots in the wrong soil. People in our community, especially those who already disliked me, seized the story and twisted it until it pointed like a knife in my direction. "Daniel worked himself to death because of her," they whispered. "He carried her weight until it crushed him." Those whispers reached Nathan's ears before he had the maturity to question them, and because I did not give him the truth, he clung to the lie everyone else offered. I watched confusion turn into resentment, resentment turn into belief, belief turn into a wall I could never climb. And then Amber arrived, the woman who perfected cruelty by cloaking it in concern. She learned about Daniel's mother years earlier, a bitter woman who never forgave me for marrying her son, a woman who openly blamed me for Daniel's exhaustion. Amber visited her once, under the guise of wanting to know Nathan's family history. The old woman, eager for validation, spilled everything her version of things, the ugliest version. Amber brought those words to Nathan like she was delivering gospel. "Your father didn't just die," she told him one day. "He died because your mother drained him, because she made him carry everything alone." Nathan believed her instantly, and once he did, nothing I said could undo the damage. A lie told kindly for love had been replaced by a lie told cruelly for power. Amber twisted every part of our past to fit the narrative she needed. "She uses kindness to manipulate people," she would whisper. "She drained your father. She will drain you too." I heard pieces of those sentences over the years, floating through rooms I was no longer welcomed in. They cut deeper than anything the neighbors ever said. What I did not know, not until much later, was that Amber had her own reason for poisoning him. Her mother had once been in love with Daniel before he met me. A teenage romance that fizzled out but left bitterness in its wake. Amber grew up hearing her mother say that I stole the life that should have been hers. I was not aware of that past, but Amber was. And she wanted revenge more than she wanted family. So she weaponized Nathan's grief, sharpened it into something she could use. She knew exactly where the cracks were. She pressed until they widened. But lies, no matter how polished, cannot erase truth forever. The truth was simple. Daniel died while trying to make his son happy. And I lied to protect that same boy from drowning in guilt. I carried the blame silently, believing that shielding Nathan was the same thing as loving him. I never imagined that the lie I told to save him would eventually become the very thing he used to condemn me. By the end of this revelation, something inside me settled. Nathan's hatred had never come from the truth. It had come from a story crafted by people who needed me to be small, guilty, and forgettable. But the truth finally uncovered did not make me smaller. It made me whole again. Nathan did not give me time to remove my coat or steady my breath after the humiliation in the living room. He grabbed my wrist too tight for a son who once cried at the thought of hurting me and dragged me down the hallway toward his private study. The door slammed behind us with a sharpness that felt like a warning. I could still hear the muffled sounds of laughter from his guests, as if joy continued only where I did not exist. Before I could sit, he pushed me into a chair. A stack of papers landed in front of me with a slap so loud it made my heart jump. "Sign these," he said. I looked at the pages, blinking slowly, reading each cold line as the words carved into me. Property transfer agreement, full relinquishment of rights, acknowledgement of non-ownership. It took me a moment to understand. He wanted me to sign away our family home, the house Daniel and I bought with secondhand furniture, patched curtains, and nights sewing until my hands cramped. The house where Nathan took his first steps, the house where I held him through fevers and nightmares, the house I kept even after Daniel died because I wanted Nathan to have a place that did not shift beneath him. "Why would I sign this?" I whispered. Amber stepped out from the corner, where she had been leaning against his desk as if she were the rightful owner of everything in the room. Her smile was sharp, bright, poisonous. "Because it is embarrassing," she said, "to have a holiday property with a previous owner who still smells like poverty." She waved a manicured hand in front of her face, as though the very air I breathed was offensive. I felt a slow tremor rise in my chest. "This house is our history," I said quietly. "Your history, Nathan. Your father." "Do not say his name," Nathan snapped, slamming his hand on the desk. "You lost the right to talk about him the day you let him work himself into the grave." The lie Amber fed him had rooted deep. I saw it now not as anger, but conviction poison that felt like truth. I met his eyes. "Your father did not die because of me." Nathan scoffed. "Everyone knows the story. Even Amber's family knew. He died carrying your weight. He died trying to escape that damn basement you loved so much." He pushed the papers closer. "You owe me. I grew up ashamed because of you. Dad worked himself to death because of you. So now you will do something for me. You will sign." His voice had the coldness of a man who had practiced this line in his head, repeating it until cruelty sounded like justice. I folded my trembling hands. "Nathan, listen." "No," he shouted. "For once in your life, listen to me." Amber circled behind him like a shadow. "Nathan is being generous," she said sweetly. "We could have simply evicted you and been done with it." Evicted. The word hit harder than any insult. Nathan leaned over me, his face tight with resentment he no longer hid. "Mom, I am done pretending you belong in my life. You are a burden I have carried long enough." My breath stilled. There are sentences a mother never forgets. That one carved itself into me like a blade. I stared at him, at the boy I raised, the man he became, the stranger he let himself turn into. The air in the room felt colder than the snowstorm outside. "After everything I did for you," I whispered, "this is how you see me?" Nathan crossed his arms. "You did nothing but hold us back. Dad deserved better. I deserve better. And Amber is right, we cannot keep a house tied to your pathetic past." Amber stepped closer, her heels clicking on the hardwood. "Sign the papers, Vienna. Real families do not cling to old ghosts." Her tone was soft but deadly, the way someone speaks when they know they have already won. But I did not pick up the pen. Not because of pride, not because of anger. Because inside the weight of his accusations, I saw something else, something I had been too blind to recognize. He wanted more than the house. He wanted history rewritten. He wanted me erased. Nathan mistook my silence for hesitation. "Do it," he hissed. "Sign, or I will make sure you regret it." I looked at the place where his signature already sat, bold and confident, as if my agreement were a formality. He had made the decision long before I stepped through his doorway tonight. "You really believe," I said slowly, "that your father died because of me?" "Yes," he answered immediately. Amber rested her hand on his shoulder. "You are finally saying the truth, Nathan." She drained him. She drains you. I closed my eyes briefly. For decades I had carried the lie to protect him. Now that same lie was being used to destroy me. I pushed the papers back toward him. "No." The word came out small, steady, unmistakably final. Nathan's face twisted. "What do you mean? No?" "I will not sign away my home," I said. "And I will not sign away myself." He stepped closer until I felt his breath on my face. "Then get out. Get out of my house. Get out of my life." I stood slowly, my knees aching, but my voice firm. "This house was built on sacrifice, on your father's love, on everything you no longer remember." Nathan pointed at the door. "Leave, now." Amber opened it for me with a smirk. I walked out without the pen, without the papers, without my son. Behind me, the door slammed shut. And in that echo, I understood something painful and true. The child I had shielded all my life now wanted to erase me from the very home I had bled to keep. And for the first time, I let the truth settle deep inside me. He no longer saw me as his mother. I spent that night sitting in a borrowed motel room with a thin blanket and a window that rattled every time the wind hit it. I could not sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Nathan's face cold, furious, certain that I was nothing but dead weight he needed to cut off. I kept replaying his words, looking for some sign that he did not mean them, but every memory sharpened the truth. He had wanted to erase me, not just from his life, from the very place I had built for him. By morning, I felt hollow, but not broken. There is a difference. I called the only person who had known Daniel as long as I had his old attorney, Harold Whitfield. He had handled every legal document Daniel ever signed, including the ones we never spoke about. When he heard my voice, he told me to come immediately. Harold's office was warm, lined with old books and framed certificates that looked older than him. He studied me for a long moment before speaking. "You sound like a woman who has run out of places to stand," he said softly. "I was thrown out of my own home," I replied. "My son thinks it belongs to him." Harold didn't look surprised. He let out a small sigh and opened a drawer. "I have been waiting for this day, Vienna. I hoped it would never come." He pulled out a thick file, one I had never seen before, and placed it gently on the table, as if it were a sleeping child he didn't want to wake. "This," he said, "is your husband's final estate plan. He created it before he passed. And he never changed a single word." My breath caught. "Nathan told me he inherited everything." Harold shook his head firmly. "That is what he believes, but it is not true." He opened the file to a page with Daniel's signature strong, deliberate, unmistakably his. "Your name," Harold said, tapping the top of the page, "is listed as primary owner of the house. Not secondary. Not partial. Primary." I stared at the words, "Vienna R. Lawson, sole property holder." My hands trembled. "But I never signed anything." "You did not have to. he said gently. Daniel filed the deed in your name alone because he wanted to make sure you were safe. He told me, if anything ever happens to me, Vienna needs protection first. Nathan will grow, but she has carried enough. The room tilted a little. I felt a sting behind my eyes and inhaled slowly, refusing to cry. Not here, not over this. There is more, Harold added, sliding another document toward me. This is his will. My heart pounded as I read the opening sentence. I leave all real property, financial assets, and personal holdings to my wife, Vienna Lawson, without exception. All of it. The house, the land, the accounts. Not a single mention of Nathan. He never changed it, I whispered. He never wanted to, Harold replied. He adored you, Vienna. He trusted you'll know what to do with everything. And he believed Nathan would understand that eventually. I felt a strange ache, part grief, part gratitude, part disbelief that the truth had been buried under decades of guilt I carried alone. But then Harold leaned back, his expression turning heavier. There is something else you need to know, he said. Something about Amber. My stomach tightened. What about her? Harold interlaced his fingers. She is not who she pretends to be. She did not come into Nathan's life by accident. I frowned. What do you mean? She is the daughter of someone from your past, he said. Someone connected to Daniel. I felt the air drain from the room. Who? Lydia Hale. The name hit me like a blow. Lydia, the woman Daniel once dated before he met me. The woman who had told me, on the day of our wedding, that Daniel was making the biggest mistake of his life. The woman who had despised me, simply because Daniel chose me over her. Amber is her daughter? I whispered. Harold nodded. And she grew up hearing one story. That you stole her mother's future. Amber believes you ruined her family. She came into Nathan's life with a purpose. My hands clenched tightly. The puzzle clicked together painfully, perfectly. Amber had not just manipulated Nathan. She had been planting poison with an agenda. Every whisper, every accusation, every twisted version of Daniel's death. She had been waging a quiet war. She is not just cruel, Harold said. She is calculated, and she wanted the house because, to her, it represents everything her mother lost. I sat back, stunned. All the pieces of the past I thought were forgotten had come back wearing expensive heels and a polished smile. Harold placed a final set of documents in front of me. These reinstate your full legal authority. Ownership, removal rights, asset control. Everything Daniel intended for you. My fingers hovered above the papers. Vienna, he said gently, your husband trusted you. The law protects you, and now you must protect yourself. I picked up the pen. For years, I had let guilt, silence, and love keep me small. But as the ink flowed across the page, I felt something shift inside me. Something that had been quiet for too long. A spine. A voice. A right that had belonged to me all along. I signed every document with steady hands. When I finished, Harold smiled with quiet pride. You now have absolute ownership, he said. Nathan and Amber have no legal claim, and if they try to challenge you this time, they will lose. I exhaled slowly. For the first time in decades, I was not the woman people talked over, pushed aside, or dismissed as burdensome. I was the woman holding the deed, the authority, and the truth. And neither Nathan nor Amber knew what was coming. I returned to the house just after dusk. Snow was falling in lazy white sheets, soft enough to look peaceful, but cold enough to sting. I walked up the familiar driveway with the folder tucked firmly under my arm, the one holding every truth Daniel left behind. Every step felt steadier than the last. My heart did not race. My breath did not shake. I was not the woman they threw out anymore. Laughter spilled through the windows long before I reached the porch. Another gathering, more guests, more people for Amber to impress. It made sense. People like her needed crowds the way liars needed an audience. I knocked once. I didn't wait. When the door opened, a woman I had never met looked at me the way someone looks at a stain on expensive clothing. "Oh," she said, wrinkling her nose, "are you lost? This is a private event." Before I could answer, Amber appeared behind her with a glass of red wine and a smile sharp enough to cut skin. "Oh, look," she purred. The Christmas stray found her way back. Her friends tittered behind her. I stepped past them without asking permission. "Where is Nathan?" Amber grabbed my sleeve. "You don't get to walk in here like you belong." I turned, meeting her eyes with a steadiness she did not expect. "This is my home," I said. "I walk wherever I want." For the first time, she hesitated. The living room was crowded with guests in designer coats, each holding drinks, each staring at me as if my presence had spoiled the air. Nathan was near the fireplace, in the center of a group, telling some story with exaggerated hand movements. He looked different, maybe not physically, but smaller somehow, eaten up by the arrogance he relied on. When he saw me, his expression changed instantly from confidence to rage. "What are you doing here?" he shouted, loud enough for the entire room to hear. "I told you to leave us alone." I ignored the sting of the words. I placed the folder on the coffee table, opened it neatly, and spoke with a voice that carried across the room. "I came to deliver something, and I want you to hear it loud and clear." Amber folded her arms, smirking. "Oh, this should be good." I lifted the first page, the original deed, Daniel's signature, unmistakable, at the bottom. "I am the sole legal owner of this house," I said calmly. "My name is the one on the deed, not yours, not his, mine." The room fell silent. A glass clinked softly against a plate. Nathan blinked, his face drained of color, then flushed violently. "You're lying." "Your father filed the deed in my name alone," I said, "and he left me everything, every brick, every dollar, every right." Amber let out a forced laugh. "Do you really expect anyone to believe you? This place has been Nathan's since his father died." "His father," I replied evenly, "left him nothing." The guests shifted uncomfortably. Nathan stepped closer, shaking with fury. "You can't take the house. This is my life." I looked at him, really looked at him. At the boy I raised, at the man shaped by lies, and the woman standing beside him. "Your life," I said softly, "was built on my silence. That silence ends now." The words hit harder than I'd expected. Nathan froze, his chest heaving, his eyes blinking rapidly, as if trying to rewrite the moment in his mind. Amber recovered first. "This is pathetic," she snapped. "A desperate old woman trying to make herself relevant. No one here believes you have a claim on anything. Why don't you take your little tragedy act somewhere else?" I picked up the second document, the reinstatement papers, granting me full authority to remove occupants. "This," I said, holding it high enough for everyone to see, "is a legal order. Effective immediately, you and Nathan are required to vacate my home." Gasps rippled across the room. Amber's mouth fell open. "You can't." "I can," I interrupted. "And I am." Amber's face twisted. "No one is going anywhere. Nathan, say something, do something." Nathan stared at me, shaking. His voice cracked when he finally spoke. "Mom, please, don't do this. We can talk. We can fix." "You should have thought of that," I said quietly, before throwing me out into a blizzard. Amber lunged toward the table, snatching the papers and crumpling them. "This is trash. You're nothing. You don't get to ruin our lives because you're lonely and bored." I stepped closer, my voice steady as stone. "I didn't ruin your life, Amber. You tried to ruin mine, and you failed." She screamed a raw, furious sound and stormed toward the stairs, grabbing her coat off a chair. "This house is hideous anyway," she shouted. "Enjoy rotting in it, old woman." The door slammed behind her. All eyes shifted to Nathan. He stood trembling, looking at the crumpled papers on the floor, then at me. "Mom," he whispered, tears forming, "I don't have anywhere else to go." I felt the ache rise, but I pushed it down. I had spent my entire life softening myself to make room for him. Not anymore. "You do now," I said. "You made your choice. Tonight I am making mine." He sank onto the couch, burying his face in his hands. For the first time in his life, he understood loss. Nathan found me in the hallway after the guests had finally scattered like frightened birds. The house was quiet now, stripped of its false glamour, its loud conversations, its curated warmth. What remained was a silence that felt heavier than any accusation. He stood there trembling, eyes red, like a child who had woken from a nightmare only to realize the nightmare was real. "Mom," he whispered, voice barely holding together, "I need to know something. Did Dad really die of a stroke?" I held his gaze. For the first time in years, he was not speaking down to me. He was looking for truth, my truth. And I had carried it alone for far too long. "No," I said softly. The word hit him like a blow. He stumbled back a step. "Then, what happened?" I swallowed the ache rising in my throat. "Your father died on his way to buy your birthday gift. A train hit his truck during the storm that night. He wasn't working. He wasn't exhausted. He was thinking of you." Nathan's breath shattered into pieces. "He died because of me?" The words tore out of him like something sharp. I moved closer, not to comfort him, but to steady the truth between us. "He died because he loved you. That is all. You were never the reason. I lied about the stroke so you wouldn't carry guilt you were too young to understand." He covered his mouth with trembling fingers. A sound escaped him, half sob, half gasp. All those years of bitterness carved into him, and half of it had come from a lie I told to protect him. The other half, the darker half, came from her. He wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. "Amber told me Dad worked himself to death to keep you afloat. She said you drained him until he broke. She said, the truth is, Amber didn't plant the seed, she only watered it." Nathan had carried traces of that resentment since childhood, shaped by whispers he overheard long before he understood what they meant. She didn't create the wound, she simply pressed on the one already there. "She lied," I said sharply, cutting through the poison before it spread further. "She learned that story from her mother, the woman who loved your father before he ever met me. Amber grew up believing I stole her mother's chance at a better life. She wanted revenge, and she used you to get it. Her mother never confronted me because she couldn't bear to see Daniel happy with someone else. But she never stopped telling her daughter that I was the thief of her life. Amber inherited that bitterness like a family heirloom." Nathan stared as if seeing the world rearrange itself in front of him. "So, all this time, she was using me?" "Yes." His shoulders collapsed inward. The arrogance that once wrapped around him like armor fell to the floor. "Mom," he whispered, voice cracking, "I am so sorry. Everything I did, everything I said, I didn't know. I swear I didn't know." I let him speak. Not because I needed apology, but because he needed to hear himself say it. He stepped closer, tears spilling. "Please, please don't leave me. I only have you now. You're the only family I have left." That sentence hung in the air, raw, trembling, desperate. And for a moment, only a moment, I felt the echo of the boy he used to be. The boy who brought me paper snowflakes and asked me to tape them to the window. The boy who curled against my side when thunder shook the roof. But that boy had died long before Daniel did. I took a breath, deep enough to steady the truth rising inside me. "Nathan," I said quietly, "listen very carefully." His eyes locked onto mine, pleading. "We owe each other nothing now." He blinked, confused. "Mom, what do you mean?" "You are not my son," I said, each word slow, deliberate, steady. "And I am not your mother." The color drained from his face, his mouth opened, but no sound came out. "The woman who raised you," I continued, "the one who worked until her hands bled, who protected you from every storm, who kept every pain away from you. She died the day you decided she was a burden." Nathan shook his head violently. No, don't say that, please. I can change. I will change. You should have changed," I said, "before you threw me into the snow like trash." He reached for me, but I stepped back. His fingers closed around empty air. "Mom, please, I am begging you." I spoke softly, almost gently, because sometimes gentleness is the sharpest blade. "You made your choice when you believed a lie, because it was easier than loving the truth. Now, you will live with that choice." His knees buckled and he collapsed, sobbing raw, unguarded, unraveling. I watched him without hatred, without anger, without the old ache that once chained me to him. I watched him the way one watches a stranger. Then I turned away. I walked through my house without looking back. Each step felt lighter. At the door, I let the cold rush in, filling the space where grief once lived. Behind me, Nathan cried my name again and again, but it no longer belonged to him. Outside, the snow fell softly, as if blessing an ending long delayed. And in that stillness, the truth settled. Not all goodbyes are losses. Some are deliverance. The next morning, I moved through the house in a silence nothing like the one he used to impose. His silence had weight. This one breathed. For the first time in years, the house felt like mine because I finally existed in it without apology. I set up the little Christmas tree I carried the night he threw me out. I hung the old ornaments, his paper star, the wooden sleigh Daniel carved, the crooked winged angel. Warm light trembled across the window. I baked bread, letting cinnamon and butter soften the walls, and realized I no longer wanted to hold this house. I had held too much for too long. So I wrote to the shelter that once helped the women I stitched clothes for, and signed the deed over to them, a home for women who needed safety, the kind I'd spent my life trying to give. That afternoon, as I stepped outside, I heard footsteps behind me, slow, hesitant, familiar. "Mom?" Nathan's voice cracked, as if the word itself hurt. I turned and saw him standing at the edge of the walkway, hands shaking inside his coat pockets, eyes swollen from crying. He stood there shivering, not from the cold but from the realization that Amber had abandoned him the moment the house was no longer hers to claim. "Mom, can I come home for Christmas?" There it was, the question he should have asked years ago, spoken too late for the boy he used to be and too early for the man he had not yet become. I watched him struggle to hold himself together, and for a moment I felt the old instinct, the one that used to rise whenever he fell, the one that urged me to lift him, soothe him, save him. But mothers cannot save grown men from the consequences they created. I took a breath, steady as winter air. "This home now belongs to women who know the value of a family," I said. "You had one, and you threw it away." He stepped closer as if the distance itself hurt him. "I lost everything," he whispered. "Amber left. I don't even know where to go." "I hope," I said quietly, "you find a place where you can learn who you are, without hurting those who loved you." His face folded in on itself. For a moment, he looked like a candle guttering in the wind. He reached out, but his hand fell before it touched me. "I'm sorry," he said, barely audible. "I know," I replied. Then I turned away, not out of cruelty, but out of the clarity that forgiveness and return are not the same thing. He had asked for a home. I could only offer him the truth. He stood there for a long time, until the cold forced him back into the night. When he finally walked away, his footprints trailed behind him, like a story ending exactly where it needed to. Inside, the house glowed with the soft gold of Christmas lights. I placed the small tree on the table and stepped back to admire it, the crooked angel, the old ornaments, the gentle glow that felt like a second chance meant for the right people. As I stood in that warm, quiet room, I felt something I had not felt since my husband died. Peace born, not from surrender, but from choice. I lifted the tree in my hands, feeling the soft pine needles brush my wrists, and whispered to myself, to the empty room, to the future I had finally chosen, "I came here carrying love. I leave carrying dignity." Then I touched the deed one last time and smiled. "This house was mine," I said, "and I chose to give it to someone worthy." Outside, the snow fell softly, as if blessing the end of one story and the beginning of another. And in the gentle glow of the Christmas lights, I finally felt home. Thank you, sweetheart, for staying with me through every quiet heartbreak and every loud victory of this journey. If this story touched a piece of your heart, if it reminded you of your mother, your grandmother, or even a part of yourself that deserves gentleness and respect, then I hope you'll stay with us a bit longer. If you want more stories of justice, resilience, warmth, and the kind of endings where kindness finally wins, subscribe to Grandma True Stories. Your support helps these stories travel farther, shine brighter, and reach the hearts that need them most. Take care of your heart, dear one. Until the next story, stay gentle, stay brave, and never let anyone tell you that your worth has an expiration date.